Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. So I guess we're doing it. North Korea says it will send troops to Ukraine within a month. The June 19th Defense Pact, signed between Russia and North Korea, included a promise to provide military assistance to one another. So Putin is desperate for military allies, and he got down on his hands and knees and begged the living God, Kim Jong-un, for military help. So this military treaty states, in the event that any one of the two sides is put in a state of war by an armed invasion from an individual state or several states, the other side shall provide military and other assistance with all means in its possession without delay. So the good news is nobody has invaded Russia. Nobody is threatening Russia. If Russia just goes back to its own country and stays there, the war is over, and we can get back to trading with each other. So what's really going on? Why is Kim Jong-un willing to send people, bodies, to the war zone? North Korean troops fighting in Ukraine would just be cannon fodder, according to the Pentagon. And Kim Jong-un is a relatively young guy. I think he's like a year or two younger than me. So he has no memory of the Korean War. The last time the North Korean people fought a war. None of these people have military or combat experience in a real-world environment. So I think Kim Jong-un is just offering up a test. The reports are he's sending an engineering unit, like 100 or 200 guys, and these guys are going to be digging trenches and fixing roads. When in reality, we know that as soon as these North Koreans show up in Donetsk, the Russians are going to try and gang press them into a frontline assault unit. Maybe Kim Jong-un knows this is going to happen, and he's curious. He's curious what will happen when his multi-million man army actually has to do some fighting. But here's the problem for Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. They don't have a lot of things in North Korea. If you Google things they don't have in North Korea, freedoms, human rights, steady electricity, international phone calls, and the ability to leave the country. Nobody gets in and out. No information gets in and out. That's the only way the Kim regime can stay in power. So this is a huge gamble for Kim Jong-un. And there's just so many things they don't have in North Korea. The internet's pornography, K-pop music, smartphones. So these North Koreans are going to show up, and none of them have seen white people before in person. And they're going to be given marching orders from Russians. And I think they're going to be exposed to a lot of things they've never seen before. Grass-fed beef probably will be one of them. They don't really have meat for dinner very often in North Korea. One of my favorite facts about North Korea is that when you go to a barbershop, there's only about 15 approved hairstyles you can have as a North Korean man. You're not allowed facial hair. And I think everyone in North Korea colors their hair because I never see anyone with white or gray hair. So the big thing is food. The Kim regime maintains its power by basically starving its own people perpetually. So even in the occupied territories, with Russian overseers tightly controlling them, they still have to be fed. And even being fed food from Russia will look like a Michelin star Parisian fancy restaurant compared to what they've been accustomed to their entire lives in North Korea. So I'm convinced as soon as these North Korean soldiers show up, they're probably going to murder their overseers and defect to the West, as long as they're given a lifetime supply of choco pies. Yes, I think the Russians are going to try and bribe them or reward them with sugary snacks, something they've never had. But as soon as they figure it out that if they just get to the other side. If they just get to Ukrainian custody, then they're free and they're safe forever. They're going to defect en masse. This is going to be hilarious to watch. Assuming they live longer than a couple days. Washington to approve deployment of U.S. military contractors to Ukraine. If Russia wants to send North Korean soldiers, well, the United States can always do more. CNN, citing 4 U.S. officials, reported that the White House is considering allowing U.S. military contractors to deploy to Ukraine to repair and maintain equipment. How this works is in the United States military, there's 2,000 uniformed personnel, active duty, guard, and reserve. And then there's about 778,000 GS civilians. But on top of that, there's millions of contractors. Many of them are veterans with uniform experience. And these are the people, they're going to be paid very well, who are going to sign contracts with defense companies to go to Ukraine to help out, repairing vehicles and offering training and guidance. I personally think there's already some contractors over there, but I think the Department of Defense is getting serious, and they're going to start sending a lot to help Ukraine maintain and repair their vehicles. Quick follow-up on the ATACMS that was shot down over this Crimean beach. I think at least 4 Russian civilians did die, but it was Russia's air defense systems that shot down the ATACMS heading for the naval base in Sevastopol. Well, the Russians are claiming they're the victims, and Solyov has come up with his response, his brilliant response for civilians on this beach dying. Solyov says, "I would wipe Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kharkiv, and Kyiv off the map. Russia can only do this with nuclear weapons. I would give the citizens 3 days to leave those cities. 3 days. After that, I would strike, because Crimea is being struck from Odessa and Mykolaiv. Belgorod is being struck from Kharkiv, and Kyiv is the center where all decisions are made. I'm going to nuke you, I'm going to nuke you, I'm going to nuke you." If only I had $5 every time the Russians threatened that. Concerning the U.S. response that a U.S.-made ATACMS killed some Russian civilians on this beach next to 2 military bases, if Russia is concerned about its losses, it should just stop the war. If Russia just goes back to their own country and stays there, and they stop trying to steal Ukrainian territory, then the war is over. Nobody has to die. But the Russians are getting pretty weird. They're getting pretty existential about their own existence. In my video last week, Putin declared that if Russia doesn't win this war, why not just end as much life or civilization in the Northern Hemisphere, threatening to nuke the world unless Russia is allowed to win. On Kremlin State TV, they really like this talking point, so they're going to echo it. Let me read for you what they're saying on Kremlin State TV. Look, we're talking about the possible destruction of the world. Do you understand? And that needs to be communicated to everyone. If it's necessary to gather everyone except the West, let's do it. Sergei, to confirm your words, it is not by chance that Putin made it clear. When you, the West, talk about Russia's strategic defeats, what does Putin say to that? We will then go until the end. And that is the destruction of the world. Why do we need a world without Russia in it? So Putin implied that unless Russia is allowed to win this war in Ukraine, they're just going to fire off their 6,000 nukes and try and kill as many people as possible. What's the point of the world existing if Russia can no longer be an empire? If Russia can no longer dominate all of their smaller neighbors? Isn't it better to go until the end? That's the exact quote. Look, we have to address the world with a simple thing. The West wants to bury us all. What, Ukraine? what such and such missiles. The West is ready to bury the world, the whole world, whole civilization. So if Russia can't win this war, they're going to fire off their 6,000 nukes, kill as many people as possible, and it's going to be America's fault, the West's fault, that we enter a new nuclear winter and global trade ceases to exist and famine overtakes China and India and the global South. If Russia kills hundreds of millions of people firing off their nukes, yeah, that's going to affect India, that's going to affect China, that's going to affect Brazil, it's going to affect everyone in Africa. But Russia wants the global South to know it's not their fault they killed everyone. The West made them do it. But this is all talk. They're not going to do it. Belousov discusses Ukraine war with the U.S. Defense Secretary. So the last time the U.S. Defense Secretary Austin spoke with his counterparts was actually March 15th of last year. That was like 15 months ago. So Putin fired Shoigu, replaced him with this economist, and Secretary Austin spoke with his counterpart for the first time. Here's what they said at the White House or the Pentagon briefing.
I also spoke by phone today with Russian Minister of Defense Andrei Belousov. During the call, the Secretary emphasized the importance of maintaining lines of communication amid Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. The last time Secretary Austin spoke to his Russian counterpart, then Russian Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu, was on March 15, 2023. A brief readout will be posted to defense.gov.
This is a good thing for the Pentagon to be speaking to the Kremlin. Once again, to just deconflict. There's politics. There's what you say to the media, what you say to your own people. But then there's what you actually say behind closed doors to your counterparts on the other side of the world. Because the Soviet Union and now Russia and the United States have had so many nuclear weapons pointed at each other, we need this hotline. We need this line of communication. I was going through this Wikipedia page and I was actually disappointed to read there is no red phone. Frequently in movies or TV shows, there's always this red phone that the Russians and the Americans call each other on, but I guess there's not actually a red phone. But something weird is going on. A Russian government plane flew from Moscow to New York. And anytime the Russians want to fly to the United States, they have to avoid EU territory because they stole all these planes. They're still flying a stolen fleet of planes. So the plane has to fly north over the Arctic Ocean to get to the Atlantic. And somebody came to the United States from Russia to talk to the Americans. It wasn't Belousov. I think there's been some false reporting. It's not Russia's defense minister. But it's somebody in the Russian government who wants to, in person, speak to the United States government about something. What could it be? Ukrainians managed to hit over 30 Russian refineries, terminals, and oil depots with drones so far this year. I really think this is the big narrative. I think this is the story that has Russia the most concerned. Going into this winter, with all of their oil refineries within 1,500 kilometers of Ukraine being knocked offline. How is Russia going to do without kerosene and gasoline and diesel this winter? They're already now a net importer, forced to purchase from Kazakhstan and Belarus. But every day this war goes on without a ceasefire, which is what the Russians want, it's only going to get worse. And concerning the potential collapse of Russia, I'm currently reading this book, The Dictator's Handbook, written by, Bruce Bueno de Mesquita and Alistair Smith. Fantastic book. I'm reading the older version, but it looks like they re-released the book recently in 2022. And I learned that partially contributing to the collapse of the Russian Empire in 1917 was that Tsar Nicholas II banned alcohol inside of Russia. So the Tsars monopolized the sale of vodka in the 16th century. By the mid-17th century, 1/3 of the population's working men were indebted to government taverns, which generated substantial revenue. Peter then pressured Russian men who were in debt to these taverns to join the military to fight for the Russian Empire. But Tsar Nicholas II in 1914, when World War I started, decided to ban hard liquors, such as vodka, because he thought that this would increase productivity, allow his soldiers to fight better, and just have a beneficial impact on society. When in actuality, this was a disaster. Nobody in Russia was happy because they couldn't drink vodka anymore, and this cost the government billions of rubles in annual lost tax revenue because they could no longer tax vodka. This bankrupted the czars and caused the government to collapse in 1917. Okay, now I understand why Russia or Putin doesn't have a problem with their soldiers being drunk all the time. Let's now get to the bad news for Russia. Dozens of Russian soldiers are trapped in Kharkiv's Vovchansk factory, and this has been going on since June 15th. It's estimated that up to 200 Russian soldiers are trapped in this factory in Vovchansk. So stepping stone number one for the Russian military with their re-invasion of Kharkiv was this city, the city of Vovchansk. And they've fallen flat on their face. And it looks like these Russian soldiers in this factory are still trapped there. They can't be resupplied and they can't evacuate. And Ukraine is putting a lot of pressure on the Russians in the city, basically to push them back. This is it, guys. This is Russia's big summer offensive. This is what they've been preparing for 6 months. Nobody's impressed. Russian ammo depot on fire in Warrants. I'll link the video down below if you want to hear a Russian ammunition depot blowing up. Russia says 20 injured in a train derailment in the far north. Is it incompetence? Is it lack of maintenance? Is it sabotage? Something seems to be happening to Russia's rail networks, so. Concerning the terrorist attack in Dagestan, I'm not really getting a clear picture of exactly what happened and what was the motivation. I feel like with the Crocus City Hall attack back in Moscow that happened months ago, there was like videos and ISIS took responsibility, but we're not really getting a clear picture of what the motivation was, other than these guys were definitely Islamic and they were targeting churches and synagogues. But Kadyrov is urging killing the relatives of the gunmen behind the Dagestan attacks. If the suspected shooter is connected with Shaitans, then their entire family should be punished. This family should know that they're fully responsible. So the Chechen leader is calling for the death of women and children to punish the shooters involved in this attack. Russian mill blogger's guest boasts of getting women thrown in a punishment basement just for speaking Ukrainian. So this is a popular Z blogger, Alexei Vovada, and he had on a guest who was in the city of Berdansk. In the beginning, when we settled in Berdansk, I bought myself a Mercedes 140 with a Ukrainian license plate. I remember when we stopped by a gas station on the outskirts of Berdansk. He then switches to Ukrainian. Good evening, show me your card. And then I said to this woman, why are you speaking Ukrainian to me? The woman is standing there and I say, why are you speaking Ukrainian to me? She's silent. I ask her one more time, why are you speaking Ukrainian to me? The woman responds, because I want to. So, that's what you want. Okay, that's it. I then drove her to the nearest block post to the basement. The basement. Let's go relax. Let's go relax in the basement together. And he's smiling and laughing. So there's a Ukrainian woman in occupied Berdansk, a Ukrainian city, who is speaking her native tongue, her first language, Ukrainian. And this Russian man viewed that as a crime. And he abducted her and took her to a basement to be tortured. The local basement you take Ukrainian civilians to when you want to torture them, of course. It's a genocide. This has to stop. Trump reviews plan to halt U.S. military aid to Ukraine unless it negotiates peace with Moscow. A new plan reviewed by Donald Trump would pressure Ukraine to negotiate with Russia by threatening to cut off U.S. weapons support. So the strategy presented to Trump by retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg and Fred Flitz, both former chiefs of staff in Trump's National Security Council, aim to end the war if Trump wins in 2024. We'll tell the Ukrainians, you've got to come to the table. And if you don't come to the table, support from the United States will end. This is what Trump's advisors are telling the media about Trump's plans for Ukraine if he wins in November. Just let Russia win. Just let Russia ban the Ukrainian language, abduct women, take them to basements, do whatever you want to them. It's not just about territory, it's about people. There are millions of people living in the occupied territories being raped and tortured by Russian soldiers every single day. And Donald Trump doesn't have a problem with this. He's not spoken out once in 2.5 years about Russian war crimes. He's not said one negative thing about Vladimir Putin in 2.5 years. So we're having an election here in the United States in 130 days. If you support Ukraine, if you're American, you only have one option. There's only one vote you can cast, and it's not for Donald Trump. Other news concerning the European Union: Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia will build a 700-kilometer defense line costing 2.5 billion euros on the border with Russia. On Kremlin State TV every day, they threaten to attack Poland, they threaten to invade the Baltics next. And really, this defense line should have been started 2 years ago, as Russia's never going to stop these wars. Something tells me 2.5 billion euros won't be enough, but hopefully the European Union can stick together and they can cover the costs in order to protect their people. Estonian Prime Minister Kallas will take over as the next EU foreign policy head. The Prime Minister of Estonia has been fantastic. I'm glad to see she's getting more power and authority within the EU. NATO appoints the Dutch Prime Minister Rutte as its next boss. NATO's 32 nations appointed the departing Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte as the alliance's next head. Here's a statement from Mark Rutte. It is a tremendous honor to be appointed Secretary General of NATO. The alliance is and will remain the cornerstone of our collective security. Leading this organization is a responsibility I do not take lightly. I'm grateful to the allies for placing their trust in me. I look forward to taking up the position with great vigor in October. Denmark to allocate nearly $5 million to restore Ukraine's energy infrastructure in Kharkiv and Mykolaiv. Thank you so much, the people of Denmark. Lithuania to allocate at least 0.25% of its GDP to support Ukraine's security directly. Thank you so much, the people of Lithuania. Spain delivers Patriot missiles and Leopard 2 tanks in its latest aid package to Ukraine. Thank you so much, the people of Spain. Latvia will transfer medical equipment worth about 350,000 euros to Ukraine. Thank you so much, the people of Latvia. Final feel-good clip. I always have to share one of these. Ukraine returns 90 of their POWs from Russian captivity, including defenders who were in the Azovstal, who held out in Mariupol. These guys have been in custody for 2 years. So here's a video of these defenders being welcomed home.
Героям слава!
Слава Україні! Терпеть є, хлопці? Так точно! Ми ж піхота, піхота! Давай, залізь. Піднімай флаг, залізь. Слава Україні! Доброго вечора! Добрий вечір!
Вітаємо!
Дякую вам!
Вітаємо, хлопці!
Дякую!
Вітаємо, хлопці, вітаємо!
Welcome home. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.